Hello everyone again in YouTube land and internet land and our land. Okay, it's me again. I have an old 797 McCulloch here. Fella Lee White from the Was area, Was, BC. I believe he lived there, or his dad fell there or worked there. My story might not be quite right. My memory's a little bit bad. But his dad found this old 797, I believe, like in a ditch or in the side of the road. Some sort of story like that. But the thing's in beautiful shape. These 797 McCullochs. This one that I looked on Chainsaw Collector's Corner, Mike Akers' site. It was built from 1967, a year after I was born. So this thing's 57 years old. Wow, man. It's got some age to it. But if you look at this saw, I'll zoom in later. Yeah, there's some wear here from a chain and whatnot. So it had been used a bit, but look at the bottom of the block here. Hardly any dirt on it and stuff. The piston is in perfect shape. I had the, let's move this cover here. I'm going to zoom you in here and show you the piston and the way the decomp works on these. Let's throw the carburetor underneath there and hold it up for a second. As you all know, my dad worked for McCulloch years ago. I did a lot of McCullochs years ago when I was young, just my dad helping him out, stripping some down and helping him put it back together, but I never really got into all the insights of it. You got to remember, I was only a year old when this one came out, right? No, I wasn't even a year old. Came out in 50s. What did I say? 67? Yeah, so I was a year old when it came out. So obviously I wasn't working on this thing when it was new. I was working on them maybe when I was like, 10, 15 years old, but then they advanced into the 125 by then, right? But you look at this thing, the piston here, perfect shape. Okay, look at that. No scoring, nothing. These uses the right-hand starter with the starter worked off on the clutch, right? And right here is your decomp valve. And there's a lever up here. It says DSP, turn the lever to a certain amount, right? Okay, and it has the old flat back BDC type carburetor or McCulloch carburetor, but I believe Walbro made them for them. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. See how it goes. So I just want to talk a little bit about this saw and show you some different stuff on it. I did try to run this saw. It has spark, and I had it fired, but it wouldn't keep running, and more than likely it's due to the diaphragms in this carburetor. So I'm going to take this carburetor apart, and we're going to go through that in a second here. But I just want to show you some of the features on it. So yeah, right-hand starter. There's the dogs. It has a DSP valve. Muffler's in perfect shape. I'll put that back on, when I go put it back together. They're kind of a weird thing to take apart. You need like a couple of special 7/16 wrenches because it has a nut and bolt system for the carburetor to get off. So I had to grind one wrench down and whatever, and finally got it off there and be able to surface it. The fuel line's in good shape. The tank was a little dirty, but I'm going to clean it out a little bit more and make sure it's got good fuel flow with no fuel leakage, right? Or no holes in the fuel line or nothing. Ignition system obviously is the old point system with the old type coil on it here like this. And I believe what we'll do is go through the timing of the points, and I'll show you how you set the points using the marks on this flywheel. If you notice on McCulloch flywheels, they have 3 marks on them on this model, and you use the timing, a multimeter to set the points on it to get them actually exact. You can use a feeler gauge and get them set right, but you should use a multimeter and get it so it's timed right, and I'll show you that later on. Here's your wire that comes from the points and condenser, and here's your wire that goes up to the switch. You can eliminate these points and condenser with one of those, they used to be called atoms, but now I forget what they're called now, but you You can change and put those little square chips in there. That'll eliminate the points and condenser to run it. I don't know what kind of timing or advance they have, but they have worked. I've used them a couple times on old saws and it worked, but then some didn't. So you take your chance, okay? So anyways, I wanted to show you that part of it. We're going to do the timing later on. But for now, I just wanted to show you this system here. This system is very strange. In this carburetor here, you have like a plunger here, and you push it in to choke it. So it must release the needle or something in there to kind of give it a gulp of fuel, almost like a purge valve system. And a purge valve system, though, on a carburetor like weed eaters and newer chainsaws, basically just get the fuel to the carburetor and doesn't flood the engine. A purge valve will not flood your engine unless you got it hooked up wrong. A primer system will actually prime fuel into a carburetor, so you got to watch how much you pump it, because you can flood the engine. Now you're going to foul the spark plug, or you're going to have to pull it like crazy with the full throttle to get it started. Okay, so that's your two kind of primer systems, either a direct fuel system or a purge valve system that just charges your carburetor. Then you use the choke to pull it over to get it going. Okay, obviously there's no choke in this. This is your primer system, and that's your choke. This carburetor also actually has a nipple on here on the side of the venturi, and it just runs right into the middle of the venturi. And it has a line right here that just goes to this black kind of rubber piece, so there's nothing there. So it's just taking either fresh air into there, and I really don't know what it's for. It's obviously not a carburetor compensator, but maybe it is. Maybe that's the old design of a carburetor compensator. And if you don't understand what I mean there, a carburetor compensator is like the Stills had originally, then Husky started to come out with them. So when your air filter is completely plugged, the thing will still run at a certain RPM, but not give you the performance like it should. Where if you don't have a carburetor compensator and your air filter is plugged, it'll obviously run rich. People adjust them leaner because they don't clean their air filters and they blow them up. So I don't know what this system really was, but I'm going to try to figure it out. And then anyone knows, let me know. It has a low speed, high speed, a throttle adjustment here. So yeah, help me out with this. I'm not, I've been around McCullochs all my life, but mainly with kart racing ones and the saw ones. Obviously I was only a year old, so I didn't work on them in those days, right? But this thing is in beautiful shape, and I'm sorry, Lee, it's taken a long time, but I'm back into this now. I have some carburetor parts here now, but I'm just going to go through this carburetor and try to figure out how this choke system works, or primer system, I should say. Okay, so let's see if I can focus you in a little bit better, and let's talk about it and see if we can all figure it out together. Like I say, I'm not an expert on these carburetors and how the functions work, but let's see if we can figure out how it works. I'm not an engineer. I'm just a good old redneck from Vancouver Island trying to figure out stuff. Okay, so let's first take the carburetor apart here on the top. Our 4 bolts. Our gasket is still in good shape for the intake, but I'm going to take it off just so I can clean up the surfaces, and I'll probably put another brand new Tillotson gasket on there. I got lots of them out of carb kits, which are the right ones for this. So we're just going to set this aside for now. I'm not going to wreck it because I might be able to have to use it one day. So let's get it apart. Flat back carburetor. See if we can figure out how this thing functions. Obviously we have a pulse hole here that runs the diaphragm, the pulse to run the fuel pump diaphragm. Where some saws like the 260 Still I showed you earlier, and new saws will have a separate line and have a fuel line and your pulse line. Here's your fuel spigot here. So let's take this flat top apart first, and we'll go through it. McCulloch is very interesting. If you ever look up the history of McCulloch, Robert McCulloch, he was married to Briggs and Stratton's daughter, I believe, and he also knew the guy that built Evinrude And you know, McCulloch was also part of Scott Water, Scott Marine, Scott Water, something like that. And also invented the first blower, the Paxton blower, because it was Robert Paxton McCulloch. His middle name was Paxton. He actually invented the Paxton blower for hot rods. He built many of things, like unbelievable amount of things. Like I say, look up the history. He made this little gyrocopter that you could land in your driveway and take off with, and all sorts of weird things. Okay, so there's our flat top. Ooh, look at that. That's a pretty bad diaphragm. It's got an old sort of Teflon type one on this side. That's your fuel pump side here. So right here is where your fuel goes in, okay? And it's getting pumped from the pulse, which is right here, through this hole, through that hole, to pump the fuel pump diaphragm here, to bring your fuel from your tank to your carburetor. So this one here, yeah, it's pretty ugly, but I do have some sort of newer ones, and we're gonna get the right kit for this and put it in. Oh man, that's super hard on there. Okay, we'll deal with that later. But let's try to figure out this choke system function here. So here's our low-speed circuit Welsh plug, or high-speed circuit Welsh plug, and here's our metering diaphragm, or fulcrum arm, if you want to call it that. It's right level with the body. Maybe that was the way to do these ones as well. Like I showed you on previous videos of setting your metering diaphragm. So let's figure out this choke thing. How does this work? It's got a plunger that pushes in. Well, tell you what, let's take this thing off and have a look. So we got two screws here, and this rod just pushes that in. So let's figure out how this works. I managed to get the little doggy out for a ball chase in the dog park here earlier before it started raining again. So I had about a 2-hour window of non-rain here finally on the wet coast. And got a little Foz out for a little run to get him a little tired out for the night here. So that was nice. Okay, so we got our two screws off. Well, not quite. There we go. Okay. So we have two O-rings and two holes here. It looks like this one's pushing pressure. Two holes in the side of the carburetor here. So now what the heck goes on here? Two holes there, but where do these holes lead to? Okay, that's the big question of the night. What do we got here? Some sort of black O-ring thing that just fell out. Not fell out, I got it right there. And a spring. There's a spring here. There's the spring. Okay. So, very odd. Let's see here in the metering diaphragm system. There's a hole there that comes up to there. Let's shoot a little blast of air through and just see where this comes from. See that hole? See that hole? I think what it does is through that hole there by the metering needle and metering lever and needle, as you pump that, it's pushing air through or sucking air through to suck the fuel into the chamber here quicker. That's what it's doing. It's sucking fuel through that hole to get the fuel into the chamber quicker. Okay, that's what I think. So I don't think it's a direct kind of primer type thing. It's just getting the fuel there quicker, almost like it's the original old version of a purge valve system. Okay, maybe not. I might be wrong. Maybe someone can comment on that and tell me. But I'm going to put this back together before I lose these little parts. The spring in there. And this O-ring. And this back on. I sort of understand it now, but not quite. I wish I had a original service book on these. It can't be that difficult, eh? We'll put that back in. This back on. So let me see here. Pumps air. Yeah, I think that's what it does. It's sucking the fuel just to get it to the fuel pump area, so it starts faster. I believe that's what it does. But when we do get it back together with the proper good diaphragms, then we will choke this and see if there's any fuel going into the Venturi system, or it's just going into the metering system area to the low speed and high speed circuit quicker to make it start easier. Okay, that's what we're going to try to figure out. But like I say, if anyone knows, let me know. Okay. I'm just gonna put this back on now because I don't want to lose anything. All this stuff you just can't buy at your local Canadian Tire or your Home Depot these days. We're just gonna set this back on. Screw the screw back in and leave it alone until I get the diaphragms, and go from there. I'm sure I can't buy a complete carb kit for these days with all the O-rings and all the little things, because you got to remember, it's 57 years old. Almost as old as me. Alrighty, so let's get this back together on this choker primer thing we call it, and go from there. I believe this was just too much complex stuff, too much work, too many things to go wrong maybe, and that's why they went to the manual choke system on the 125, the version after this model, right? This is a 123cc saw, and yeah, we'll see from there. They used, even from the factory, they actually used like nail polish kind of stuff to seal these Welsh plugs, which all this stuff's actually deteriorating and coming off, which will get through the saw and maybe clog up some of your jetting. So I'm going to clean all this out of there once I install the carb kit and see how it works. You have a low speed and high speed adjustment on this. Let's see what it was set at. Half, one turn on the low, half, one turn on the high. Pretty standard setting on old type saws. We'll see how that works out. So yeah, here I am with an old time 797, and we're going to rebuild it. At least rebuild the carburetor, make sure the ignition system's working properly, and see if we can't get it running for Lee White, so he can hang on his wall or go cut with it and see how it works. Just going to zoom back out again for a little bit and just finish talking about it. So yeah, I'm just going to get into some McCullochs in the next month or so here. I got a friend of mine down the road that actually, when he first started falling, broke in with 125 McCullochs, and he's got one complete one there and two ones for parts. So we're going to try to restore one for him to have as a nice one to put on his mantelpiece or use. I'm not sure exactly what he wants to do. And I got a few of my own that I'm gonna deal with. And I promised Buckin one for years of a 125 with a 101 card engine in it, which I actually have here. And I'm gonna in the new year get that going for him after I experiment on a couple other ones and make sure I know what I'm doing with them. I know in a way what I'm doing with them, but you got to remember these things are 50 years old or more, and there's a lot of rotten stuff in them, man. Like people think, oh, hey man, can you rebuild this old saw for me? I'm like, well, yeah, I can, but it's gonna take a long time. Like everything on these things are either rusted or deteriorated or just carboned up, or it just takes a long time, right? Where newer saws is like bam bam, I can quickly throw them together, grab a part for it. But now here, if I needed seals for this thing, I'm gonna have to research and find seals for the bottom end. Fuel lines, lucky this fuel line's in perfect shape. It's not rotten, it's good on the inside too. The tank's a little dirty. I'm going to clean that out. Clean up this surface here of the intake. And then I'm going to show you the timing of the spark, how to get that going. But hopefully I can get this done pretty soon. To help my friend here, Lee Wyatt, out, and he can have a saw that his dad used to run, just sort of like everyone else wants, They want their grandpas and their dad's saws to run, so they have a memory piece, and I think that's great. I think everyone should do that. Why throw something away like this that can be used again, or just appreciated, right? So keep your saw on the wood, your stick in the ash, you're over the road, your old saw is running, your new saw is running. Do your maintenance. If you don't know how, YouTube it, talk to people. Ask me a question if you want. I'm sorry if I don't get back to everyone, but I've been doing better lately. I've been sitting down at night and going through messages that people, or comments that people comment on my videos, and get back to them. So I'm trying to do that a little bit better. So if I haven't, please reach out to me again, and I can try again. Okay. But for now, I'm gonna go upstairs, have some dinner, see Shelly and the Foz, and go on from there, and come back down and actually I'm gonna do that tight nickel 395 cylinder and see how the chrome is on those new ones, if they're actually proper nickel or just a shitty old chrome. Oh, I swore, I'm sorry, or just a crappy old chrome that they had on the earlier ones. That was like tinfoil. So, again, keep your saw on the wood, stick in the ass, rubbing the road. Have a good night. Bye.